Hey, what's going on? It's the Petrol List.
Hey, what's going on? It's your boy Dalton from the Petrol List, and today, of course, I'm going to be talking about the Austin Grand Prix. That's right, US Grand Prix, the race that was held down in Austin about 4 hours south of where I am in the DFW area. Now, yesterday's race was really interesting for a bunch of reasons.
Yeah, that was a great start from him. I think there was some contact. We saw a little puff of smoke, but no visible damage. And yeah, what a great start for Lando Norris. He now needs to manage those tyres with the car heavy with fuel.
Max Verstappen gained a position. He is up to fifth.
And of course, me being the guy with notebook, here we go. So Mercedes had an upgraded floorboard for better, more predictable downforce and handling, and this enabled Lewis Hamilton to actually chase down Max Verstappen toward the end of the race. I think that had there been another few laps, they would have been actually fighting for the podium, which is a huge departure from basically the last couple of years. Norris came out swinging and held the lead for a number of laps. I feel like it was almost 20 laps or over 20 laps. Ricciardo was back on the grid. Tsunoda got the fastest lap. Piastri retired after an impact, which was really sad. I really like watching Piastri race. I think he's one to look out for. Both Aston Martin cars started from the pits and were plagued with issues throughout the race. Russell and Perez battled it out multiple times and were nowhere near their principal teammates. And the most kind of crazy thing of all was the post-race disqualification, and that's the part I really want to highlight. I think that F1 has a little bit of a perception problem, and that is, picking and choosing when it decides to enforce rules. We see some races where they're enforcing track limits like crazy, and some races not so much. Abu Dhabi was obviously a fiasco, and they decided to give Hamilton some extra fines for being a role model, and this time around they decided to enforce a rule that they don't really enforce that much based on some random inspections, and that of course was the floor panel. It's supposed to be 10 millimeters in thickness, and apparently both the Mercedes car of Hamilton and the Ferrari car of Leclerc measured in at something like 9 millimeters or less. Now, let's just jump right in and see what Toto Wolff had to say about it. Setup choices on a sprint weekend are always a challenge with just 1 hour of free practice, and even more so at a bumpy circuit like COTA and running a new package. In the end, all of that doesn't matter. Others got it right or we got it wrong, and there's no wiggle room in the rules. We need to take it on the chin, do the learning, and come back stronger next weekend. That to me says that Toto Wolff isn't necessarily that concerned about the positive or negative impact of the setup on the overall performance of the car and the overall impact on where the drivers ended up. Now, of course, anybody would be disappointed to be disqualified 5 hours post-race, which is kind of strange, that they would do so. You would think they would get a fine or something, but it didn't seem to throw off Toto's confidence in the car. Let's get to what Hamilton said. In Mercedes' post-race release, Hamilton said, "It is of course disappointing to be disqualified post-race, but that doesn't take away from the progress we've made this weekend." Now that says a lot. Doesn't take away from the progress. Now I want to show you one clip, and this is going to be of Sainz passing Leclerc. Now remember, Leclerc had that same floor plank problem. Now by the time Sainz was passing Leclerc, Leclerc was on, I believe, older hard tires, and Sainz was on mediums. But as you can see, it was a fairly normal pass for that kind of scenario. That extra bit of wear or, maybe lower bit of suspension by a millimeter or so, didn't seem to affect the normal outcome for the scenario that we see. Prior to the race, Lewis Hamilton was seen at one point on stage saying that he was ready for another 5 years with Mercedes and in Formula One. What that says to me is that Mercedes, they must have really found a sweet spot with the car. And even the way Mercedes is treating Hamilton right now is more so of a principal driver versus someone that they're a bit wishy-washy on. You can almost feel a little bit more respect coming from Mercedes toward Hamilton, or maybe a little bit higher expectations coming, toward Hamilton, and they're a little bit less focused on George Russell. I think that one of the big things with Formula One is not only does the car have to be amazing, but the driver has to have confidence in the car. You and I, when we're driving a regular car, whether it's on the street or on the track, we can actually perceive, the grip limitations on the tires, or we have, an innate sense of how quickly, the bulk of the car should be able to go around the corner. There's body roll, there's skid, there are all these indicators that we kind of sense in real time that tells us, hey, we should slow down before taking this right-hand turn. In Formula One, all of that kind of logic and reason and that stuff that comes, innate to our mental sensibilities, that goes out the window because these cars drive beyond what typical human sensibilities can comprehend. And so in order to really push a car to the limits, you have to have confidence. And you hear the term confidence a lot in Formula One commentary because that's kind of the only explanation for why someone can push a car so hard, so fast, and relying purely on the downforce and suspension of the car. Now, of course, there are, there's sensory that comes from being in the seat, that comes from, from driving, but you have to push this object so far beyond any normal reason that you have to have confidence in the engineering of the car in order to drive it fast. And once you get that sweet spot between an outstanding car and an outstanding driver, that's when Formula One teams really lock in and they protect that combination at all costs. You can see that protection when it comes to Verstappen and that lead Red Bull car, and you're starting to see that protection coming back with Mercedes after this weekend. I think that, the remainder of the year is going to see Hamilton looking a bit like a different driver, looking like a bit of Hamilton of old. And I think that we are in for, a treat when it comes to racing in the rest of the year, but more so in the coming years before we get into the major changes to the Formula One package in 2026. I'm excited to see how the races go and seeing so many different players in the race, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video. I was initially truly disheartened with the disqualification, but after seeing Mercedes comments from both Toto Wolff and from Lewis Hamilton, I don't think that they see it as much of a problem as maybe some of the fans do. And I think it might be a little bit like traveling in the NBA. It's an infraction that occurs. It's rare that a ref will actually call it out. I do think it's strange that Formula One decided to disqualify both of those cars, given the minimal impact that it probably had on the outcome of the race. But that is what Formula One is choosing to do right now. Does it soil their perception a little bit? I do think so, but I don't think it's going to stop fans from tuning in. So, we'll see what happens in the rest of the season. Thanks for watching. I'm out.